Hi there, it's Kathy with Sycamore and Cotton, and I'm back this week with 4 new thrift finds that I turn into beautiful home decor. So let's get started with these 2 pots. We're going to do the solid blue one first, and then the one that has designs on it we'll be doing later in the video. Now let's get started. Okay, we're going to start out with this terracotta pot that probably, well, I was going to say it might have been spray painted by someone at home, but it looks like it might not have been. It looks like it might have come this way from the store. But anyway, it doesn't matter, because what I'm going to do is give it a whole different look. I'm going to use my new mold by IOD, and I bought this mold, and this will be the first time that I've used it. I bought it for this little cabbage leaf. I love the cabbage ware that is pretty popular right now, but I've got a couple of pieces that I inherited from my sister, and when she passed away, and it's very dear to me, and I've since grown an affinity for the cabbage leaf pottery. So I'm going to make my own. The big issue will be getting the color right. So we'll just see how that goes. But for now, I'm going to start with my molds. If you haven't used a mold before, one thing that you have to remember when using air dry clay is you have got to put some cornstarch in it to help release the mold. Otherwise, it's likely to stick in there, and it would be hard to get all of it out of the details. This mold has a little snail, a carrot, some peas, and I guess this would be the carrot top. So it's really got some nice elements. I just purchased it for this. I'm sure I'll end up using those as well. But today, for this project, I'm only using the cabbage mold. So I've got it, all that cornstarch in there. Now I'm just softening up my clay. This is Sculpey clay. I like it fairly well. I have had it a while, but I keep it in an airtight bag, and I keep a damp napkin or paper towel in there as well. I'm just trying to figure out the best way to get use of all that. And I'm just going to start putting it in there, pushing, and pulling around the edges, because IOD molds have this lip around the edge that helps you get a really nice, even finish. It makes all the difference. For something of this size, I just start in pieces and just start smashing it. You do want to make sure that where you have 2 pieces coming together, that you get them mashed in really well, because otherwise it's likely to show where you bonded those 2 together or formed them together. So when you're ready to unmold it, look at that. Look how easy that came out. Can you see the details? And even the places where I had put the clay together, they did actually blend in really well. Here's a slight place that has a little bit of imperfection. Actually, that's coming off. That's just a little clump of cornstarch. Here's where I didn't get a really good edge, but you can just use your fingers and go right along. And anywhere there's just a little piece of clay that's making it a little jagged in its edge or a little unsmooth. Oh, I love working with this piece. I do, because it's a good size. Look at that detail. Now, I am going to, I think I'll end up just cutting off the, see this little stem? I think I'll cut it off because I want to, obviously it needs to be even, smooth, flush on the bottom. And I want to have it a little bit coming up over the edge, but not so much that it's not supported by the pot. Okay, so there's the first one. I'll leave it like this while I'm working on the others. It's going to take me, I think, probably 4 at least to get a good coverage around this. I'll have them overlapping a little bit. All right, so now I'm going to place this one like such. When I actually get these to where I'm ready to draw them, I'll put something under there to make it come out a little so that it's not flat against there. All right. Now what I'm going to do now, because I have 3 and 3 is not quite enough, I could probably make a 4th one and make that work. So what I'm going to do is take, as you can see, there are 3 sections to this cabbage leaf. So I'm going to go ahead and make the one, and then I'm going to separate them and use each one as a filler between the full leaves. And we'll see how that goes. All right. So here I'm just cutting along the edges. And I think I'm going to put that one down first, actually, because it's going to be the underneath the other, so it needs to be down first. I'm looking to see about something to spread this with, because I really don't want to be getting this all over my hands. So I'm just using my my paintbrush. You do always want to make sure that you have your glue spread everywhere. There's a fine line between getting enough glue and getting too much, because we don't want it to be so much that it squishes out. We can always clean it if it does, but who wants to waste their glue that way? All right. See, I had too much glue. I'm going to use a brush and get that out of there right now. This chip brush probably wasn't the best option for me to use. I should have gotten something softer and something smaller, but it worked out. Now what I'm doing here is using just a little bit of cling wrap or plastic wrap. I do spray some baking spray on it so that it won't, so that I can get it out easily. I'm not sure if it would stick or not, but I don't want to take any chances, so I just spray a little bit and roll it in my hands. And I'm tucking that in behind the cabbage leaves that I want to stand out a little bit. Now this is probably something I might have been able to avoid doing or would not have had to do. I'm not sure. Again, this is all trial and error. So what I'm doing now, I may not do the same way the next time I make a pot like this. But it did work once it dried overnight. Those cabbage leaves did stand out a little more and weren't flush with the flower pot. Like so far. Now, go through and just make sure I don't have any glue. Didn't do too bad with the glue. Here I'm just making a few more tips of the side pieces. I'll just be tucking those in between the other parts that are already on there around the top, and there's no need in making an entire leaf for just those areas. I could use some pottery tools, but until then, my debit card, an expired debit card, until then it works just fine to help me smooth out and make some cuts in the air dry clay. So far, I'm loving this. And what I'm just now discovering, actually working kind of backwards on this. Maybe I should have started at the top with these smaller pieces, but I really wasn't sure, you know, exactly how much this would cover. So it's okay though, it's all good, because I do love how that looks. I do love how this looks here. So I'm just going to go around and finish up so that all of these outside edges of this flower pot are covered. Initially I thought that it wouldn't matter to me, but the more I do of it, the more I don't like seeing that. So I am going to, except for like right here, that right there is, I think will be fine, but I don't know, who knows, we'll see. I'm just going around here and adding a little bit of glue, kind of like caulking, just to add a little extra protection and strength there in places where there's a little tiny gap. I pulled out what shades of green that I had that I thought I could use to mix together to make the closest shade of green that I could get to the actual cabbage ware that's out there on the market. And some of it was acrylic, that was chalk paint that I just poured in. They mixed together well. And I just kept mixing until I came up with at least a base coat. Now I go ahead and cover the entire thing in this base coat of green, of shades of green that I've mixed together. I'm pretty happy with this base coat color. And this is the result of that. I did leave those places where I didn't have full coverage because I'm going to come back in with some white wax actually. And, you know, that is a look that I'm trying to achieve. So no problems with that. It was a couple of days before I was able to get back down to my workshop, which was great because that gave the air dry clay ample time to dry, which I was hoping for. Now I'm mixing up some more of those same colors, trying to come up with something just to add a little variation to what I've got there. And I honestly don't know exactly what I'm doing. I just have ideas and start going with it. So just bear with me. I feel like I need a little bit darker for some of the areas, and so I got the darkest green that I have, which is Everett Fusion Paint, and that's there where I dabbed just now. And I just start, because it's pretty thick, I did spray some water down on the plate to thin it out a little bit, and I just very lightly start dabbing it into the brighter color. And I'm just brushing it up in along some of the veins of the cabbage. And then I decide to start spraying it. And I do it upside down because I want it to get lighter as it goes toward the top. So I turn it upside down for that. Again, I have no clue what I'm doing here. I mean, definitely no plan. I'm just working it as I go and trying to achieve that look of the vintage cabbage ware, or even the modern day reproductions of cabbage ware. So literally this is just a guessing game of what I do as I'm putting this on. I do like the way this dark is looking in some of the areas, but I want to make sure I don't get it too dark or put that on too heavily. That's a pretty small brush that I'm using so that I can just add little details. I don't want big. Oh, now there's where one of the edges broke off. That was actually a piece that I had glued in, and I can put it back really easily there. It wasn't a whole leaf, it was just one of those tops that I put around the edge. There, I put my glove on because I had spray painted the inside of this pot, and I didn't want to get the spray paint all over my hands because I knew it wasn't completely dry yet. And then I start taking the brighter color and just dabbing it back over some of the places where I might have gotten it a little too dark. And really I'm just trying to get layers of color on here. And there are some places where my glove or my fingers, where I was spraying this and my fingers got wet, it was pulling off some of the paint. So I also go over all those places where I had pulled off some of that original paint. And really this is just again, it's just a trial and error, seeing what I like best, what seems to work best. And I'm not too unhappy with how it came out. I think, you know, this was my experimental piece, and I think that I'll do better with the next piece that I do, and I will be doing a few others. I've got some ideas for something other than a flower pot. After allowing all that to dry really, really well, I then apply one coat of clear wax. Now it's looking like it's white, but it's actually a clear wax by Waverly, and it will dry clear. And I just get that on and make sure that I get it in all the crevices. The purpose for putting the clear wax on is that I'm going to come back in after this dries, and I'm going to put a white wax. It's actually, I use the same wax, the clear wax, and mix some white paint in with it to make my own white wax. And I don't want to leave a whole lot of the white wax on. So I'm putting the clear wax on so I have more control of how much of the white wax will stay on the project and how much I can take off. All of that has dried, and so now I am going back over it with the clear wax mixed with some white paint and just brushing that on kind of liberally, but not really heavily. And I do a section at a time. I want to make sure that it does get down into the details of the leaf. And then I'm taking my paper towel and wiping that off, but it's not wiping it off as much as I'd hoped. I was wanting it just to stay on the details, the low points, and it was not wiping off as much on the higher points. So I pull out the wet wipe and start using that, and that worked better. But I would not recommend these wet wipes for this this project, this kind of project, because it started disintegrating and leaving fibers all over the project. So I ended up having to go and pull those fibers off and brush them off in areas. It wasn't horrible, but it was enough. However, I did continue going back and forth between the paper towels and the wet wipes because that's all I had available. And I am getting more of a look that I want. Again, I use some of the wet wipes to wipe it off the leaves where, you know, the higher points on the leaves, so that I would have that contrast of the brighter colors, trying again to give it that cabbage wear look that's so beautiful. And here it is. I have learned a lot from this. It's not perfect in how I wanted it to be, but it's close enough for my first project. I'll be keeping this one at home, and hopefully we'll be making more to put out there in my booths. Let me know how you like this, and if you have any tips, I'll be more than happy for you to share in the comments. Now on to project 2. This project is giving this really pretty vase a refreshed look. I love the shape of it. I wasn't too crazy about the colors with it. I'm sure it's been beautiful when it was brand new, but it just seems a little aged. So I'm giving it a good clean with some window spray and my wet wipes. And it really wasn't very dirty, just a little dusty. And then I take it off camera and I spray paint the inside as well as the outside. For the inside, I just wanted to get it cleaned up and uniform looking. The outside, I wanted to use it as a primer to make sure that I don't have any problems with adhesion. After the white spray paint had dried, I brought it back inside and put one coat by brushing on, one coat of Apothecary paint by DIY. I let that dry, and then I pulled out my sponge dauber and started daubing on the second coat. I don't like brush strokes, and it's hard to paint without leaving some brush strokes, even in your self-leveling paints. So using this sponge dauber really helps for me to get a smooth surface and eliminate those brush marks. I'm a little impatient, so I always like to speed up the drying process. And while it's drying a little bit further on its own, I start going through the 2 new IOD transfer booklets that I got. One is Emily Claire, I think, and the other, which I'm looking through right now, is Flora Greca. And that's the one that I end up using. I think these transfers are made for this mold or for this vase that I'm using, or vice versa, one or the other. And I am real happy with the selection that I made. And here I'm just sizing it up, trying to figure where exactly to place it on the front. I do end up going around and making some relief cuts because this is a rounded surface, And although there's a good majority of it that's flat, but I do need to go and make those relief cuts so that I can get the transfer to lay down as flat as possible. I want to get it centered, of course, and to make sure that it's level across the front. I did, however, place it a little higher than it should have been, at least in my opinion. And what I did to counter that is to cut out some more floral transfers out of that book, as well as the other. I think they go well together with mixing and matching, and you'll see in a minute, but I go around the bottom and add a little extra detail there. But this is just one piece here, and it goes on pretty quickly, considering that I do have some curves to work around. Here I just folded it in half to make sure that I had the center point on it, so I would make sure that it was centered at least across. And then here I'm making some not really fussy cuts, but just going around and making some relief cuts in it to make sure that I can, as I mentioned earlier, get it adhered as well as possible without ending up with wrinkles or tearing. Now I do end up, as I'm applying the transfer, I do end up cutting across in two different sections there at where my thumbs are right now, and in placing it on a curved section, those do not meet when I actually get them applied the way they need to be. So I come back with that and add even a couple of other extra pieces to camouflage where I made those two cuts and it did not meet perfectly. Getting that center part to adhere was a little bit more tedious than the others. When you've got really fine print or designs like that, it does make it a little challenging to get it all. But when you've got solid pieces, you pretty much just get one edge started and you can really easily lift the vellum from the design, and it goes a lot faster. But with those areas that are similar to what's on the inside here, it does make it a little bit more challenging, and the process is a little bit slower. You see me using my nails there. I do like to use my nails when applying transfers. It just comes in more handy sometimes if you use your own nail. The bird on this, if you didn't notice in detail, is a hummingbird. We love hummingbirds. We love all birds at our house, and my husband puts feed out for them, and we really enjoy watching them. See, and this is where I'm talking. When I start actually doing or removing the vellum around the edges where everything's more solid, it just comes up a lot easier. And with the transfer now applied, I'm just going back over everything using the carrier sheet that it came on and just burnishing it on to make sure that it's adhered completely, and that if there are any places that there were wrinkles, I smooth those out as well as possible. And I only had a couple of places that did actually wrinkle, and that's not bad considering. Now those two places that I just pointed out, that's where I had made the relief cut through the design itself. And now I'm going through my transfer book just looking for something very small that I can place over those two cracks in the design and cover that up. So I end up getting a butterfly for one, and I think the other is a cricket. It might be a butterfly too, I can't remember. I just did this a couple of days ago, so I should remember exactly what I used, but I don't. But honestly, it's so tiny, it's hard to tell. See, that's it right there. Very little, but it's just what I needed to cover up that small place where I've made that cut. And then on the other side, I do end up using a small butterfly. I wanted to make sure I was putting something very small because I did not want to interrupt or interfere with the design itself, and those worked in just perfectly. Now I've cut this piece, I believe this one is from Emily Claire, and I'm using this section that I'm cutting out right now that is a frame, purple frame with 3 butterflies inside, and I thought it would go well with the rest of the design on the front. What I'm going to do with that is place it on the very back at the bottom, centered in the bottom of the vase, and then the floral parts around it, I'll be cutting those apart to work them along the front and around the edges, or the sides rather, and to the back. Here I'm applying a banner that I thought would go well with this, and I just centered it with the front, and the floral that I cut in small pieces will start on either side. I also have one small floral piece that's going to come out from the top of the banner, because there had been some floral design there. There were some stems in it, or what looked like stems, so I do just a little bit of floral to add to the top of that. And I think that by putting it in closer proximity to the original piece, that it helps tie the whole look together, rather than the bottom transfers looking like they were just stuck on there because, guess what, I didn't center properly. I don't know, you let me know what you think. If you've seen any of my videos before where I'm using transfers, you've probably heard say how forgiving transfers are. You can cut them in half. You can cut small pieces off and mix and match. Some of them, not all of them, can be mix and match, but a lot of them can be. Some elements from one can be used with others. I've done that a whole lot. And they're just very forgiving. They're very easy to use. And I know that I've said this before. They really amplify your final project. And if you are a reseller, even though there is some expense in buying your transfers up front, you can get many projects out of one package, and by having those additional elements to the product that you're selling, you can ask, a few more dollars or several more dollars. So basically, they pay for themselves in the long run. As a disclaimer, I'm not a stockist, and I'm not involved in any sponsorship. I am a reseller, and I do refurbish older decor that's been cast aside. And I also avoided buying transfers for quite a while, until I realized that there is value in them and using them in the products and the projects that I make for my business. And now I am just using my fingers to apply a little bit of Rub and Buff in Antique Gold, I think is the color I'm using. It's definitely gold. And I'm just lightly rubbing it all around the bottom edge, and then I'll go over the top edge as well. And then this step is to clean up the bottom by applying a coat, a heavy coat of Apothecary to the bottom as well, so that it has a nice clean finish. And here it is. Off camera, I did apply a layer of clear wax by Fusion, and I used the lavender scent. It just seemed so appropriate for the design on this beautiful vase. So let me know what you think. I'm really happy with how it turned out. I'm really happy with the back and how that worked in as well. So, but you let me know how you like it. This basket is one of the first things I have ever thrifted, and I liked it so much that I wasn't sure what to do with it, and it's just been hanging in my basement. And I finally saw an inspiration picture with tulips for it to be a door hanger or door wreath, and so it didn't have a back. It was just the front of the basket. So here what you see me doing is cutting a piece of, what is this board called? I can't think of the name of it, but I got it at the Dollar Tree, and it's not cardboard or poster board. It's a little bit thicker, and I just can't think of what it's called. But If you're a crafter, I'm sure that you know what I'm talking about. Anyway, I just laid the basket down and traced the outside of it, and I'm cutting now that where I had traced it, and then I end up having to go back several times to cut it down so that it fits not along the back edge of the basket, but just inside the back edge of the basket, because I don't want any of this showing from the sides when it's all finished and ready to hang on someone's door. And of course, I also started by cleaning it really well. I just sprayed on some window cleaner and then used my brush to brush it out. Well, after wiping off the window cleaner, and then use my brush just to wipe out any dust that was settled down in between the reed of the basket. And if I had had a sink available, I would have just submerged it in water and given it a good shake in some good soapy water, but I didn't have that available, so this worked out just fine. And here I am just trying to get it fitted for the inside so that it would go inside that rim there instead of the edge, as I mentioned earlier. And that did take several times, just as you can see there with all those trimmed edges, just going over and over again until I finally got it so that I was able to put a bead of glue all the way around the inside edge, and then place the cutout there at the back of it to make a back so that everything would stay in there. And once I have it placed in there well, I then take the glue gun and run another rim of hot glue all along the back of it to keep it more secure. Now when I finish this, I will finish it up like the back side of a picture with craft paper so that that white doesn't even show. I had ordered these beautiful natural looking tulips especially for this project, and I think I got 24 of them, 20 or 24, and decided just to use 12 because I wanted to keep some of them for myself. And I pull out some styrofoam, and I knew that I would also be using just a little bit of Spanish moss, and so I got a tiny bit of that out. Because there's not a very wide space to work in the styrofoam, maybe I should have put the styrofoam on before I put that white backing on, but I cut my styrofoam in thin pieces and then just started laying that in, pushing it in until I had it fairly well placed so that I could work the stems of the tulips through it to help make them stand up securely. And guess what? My camera stopped recording just as I was getting ready to start placing the tulips in the basket. So I didn't get any of that on film, but I promise that it was just as simple as putting some taller ones in the middle, putting some and then adding the Spanish moss. Finally, I was able to get it recording again. So I started putting the Spanish moss in, just tucking it in where I wanted it. And then I started, after I got it where I wanted it, then I started gluing it in. Now you can see that I have a ribbon on the front, and I thought that that was the ribbon that I was going to use to make the bow. But once I got everything in there, I decided that ribbon really wasn't doing it for me. While I love that it's green and white and stripes, I really needed something wider, and I had a blue and white striped ribbon that also had wired edges that I knew would work a whole lot better for me. So I end up using that one. I'll take this one off, and I had just temporarily glued it just to see how I would like it. I had only glued it in one spot, so it was easy enough to see. Now fortunately you can see me here adding just a few more of those tulips. Like I mentioned, I added 12, and I wanted some coming out from the side a little, and some you know, standing a little taller in the middle. But you just put, you know, there, it's quite easy to do this. You certainly don't have to be a floral designer, because I'm not. I really think that the lines being vertical on this new ribbon that I'm putting on also makes a nice difference as well. It just makes it stand out more, I think. Unfortunately, I did not get on video of me making the bow. It's just a simple bow where I made a few loops, cinched it together, and then wrapped up the streamers around it, and then just glued it onto the basket. I'm sorry I didn't get that. I don't remember what happened, but here it is, and I am really happy with how this turned out. In fact, this may be my favorite of all that I've done for this video. Our last project is doing over the second flower pot that we showed in the very beginning. This is the one with all the different colors on it. And I decided to give it a coat of yellow. I have this beautiful yellow, I think it's called Canary, I'm not certain. It's a Waverly paint. And then I come back in with my sponge dauber and apply a second coat with that. And if you've seen before, you know that I do this, or I stipple the paint on with a paintbrush to avoid any brush marks and get a nice smooth finish with this sponge dauber. After that has dried, I then pull out my IOD English Toile transfers. I only have one full sheet of it left. Actually, I've cut off a piece of it even. But I have several pieces that are left over. And I just start using those and applying them all over the outside of this. And it actually becomes a little bit tedious because because I'm using pieces, it's not on there as a full design. So I have to work in the pieces and the elements so that it still looks good and not just stick them anywhere. And using parts, sometimes at one point I was even piecing the bottom and the top of a lamb together, and it was actually cut that way as leftover pieces. So I do enjoy this transfer. I've used it for several things already, and I may even buy another pack if it's still available out there. But I did do a tabletop with it, and that looks really nice. I have it in one of my booths. And I've done also another planter. That planter I'm actually using in my home. I didn't sell it. I did get a lot of great feedback when I posted it online, but I painted it pink and then put this same transfer on top. And I have it sitting in a white milk glass saucer to collect the drippings from watering. And I've got an orchid in it, and it's blooming beautifully right now. So if I can get a picture of that, I'll post it here as well. I do like the pink better than the yellow, but I have seen yellow with this English Toile, and I really liked it. So that's why I wanted to do this one in the yellow rather than the pink. And here it is. This was a simple and straightforward project, and I did enjoy doing it. It's not as bright as the light is showing here. I don't know why. I guess it's the app that I use to make my videos. It does skew the color a little bit, but I am happy with how this turned out. I thought how pretty it would look with a flowering plant, something that blooms in white. I'm probably going to put a white saucer with it to sell it as the drip pan when I place it in my booth. Let me know what you think about it, and do you like Toile? I absolutely love it. Thanks so much for watching. I truly appreciate your support more than I can really ever express. If you haven't already, subscribe to my channel. It costs nothing, and that would really help me with my business. So please like and subscribe and leave a comment, and I'll see you next time.